Hey everybody, it's Tuesday, April the 13th. It's 12 o'clock here in Okotoks, so it's time for Tuesday Talks with Craig. We're trying some new technology again here, so hopefully this is all working. I'm trusting that this device is sending a signal out to Facebook and YouTube right now. If you're commenting, I won't be able to see the comments live, but we'll happily respond after this talk is done. So you're welcome to still comment like you might normally do that. And just try to fill a couple seconds of time here just to make sure that the signal's going through okay. So I'll trust that it is. So yeah, it's Tuesday. Welcome to Tuesday Talks with Craig, April the 13th. And the sun is shining a little bit here in Okotoks. Not too warm yet today, but it's supposed to warm up as the week goes on. So I'm excited. The spring weather is starting to show up, and hopefully you are too. So I've been doing these Tuesday Talks for about a year now. We started doing these midweek live streams here at OAC last year, and it was about this time in April that I started doing these Tuesday Talks. And so what a year it's been. Depending where you are, if you're in our local area here, we're going through a bit of another wave of the COVID pandemic. Some might call it a third wave, with numbers going up and cases going up, and kind of a step backwards in our restrictions. The hope a couple months ago was to begin opening things up a little bit more here in Alberta, and we've now stepped back a little bit. And so it's been quite a year. And I know even though we're all going through this pandemic, it's impacting us all in different ways. And my hunch is that we've all been impacted in some way, shape, or form. And in some way, shape, or form, it's been a challenge. And so I've just been sort of thinking about this reality, that this COVID reality, we're well into a year into it now. And you might be wondering kind of when is it going to end? Is there an end in sight? When will that come? And so there's a word that's been sort of, that's come to mind, and I believe it's a word that I just want to kind of camp on for the next 2 or 3 weeks here on these Tuesday Talks. And the word is perseverance. And so I want to just talk a little bit about that. Before I get into the passage I want us to look at today, I just want to share a quote that a guy that I used to work with, he used to say this quite often, and the quote is, "Every challenge or every problem we face is an opportunity in work clothes." Let me just say that again. Every challenge or problem that we face is an opportunity in work clothes. And his reason for saying that was that when things seem tough, we should sort of look at the positive outlook in it. There's an opportunity to grow, or there's an opportunity for something positive to come out of the challenge. And that's kind of where this talk is going to go today as we think about this word perseverance. So I've referenced this passage before. I think even as recently as a couple of weeks ago, I might have referenced James chapter 1. But let's just look at James chapter 1, verses 2 to 8 in a little bit more detail right now. So let me just read it a bit and talk about this word perseverance. So James says to the church that he's writing to, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds." And let me just stop right there. How many of us, when we face challenges, when we face trials, we want to receive those trials with joy? It's typically not our first response. But he goes on. He says, this is why you should consider it, can receive it with joy, or consider it joy. Because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. And he says, let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. So going back to that quote I shared earlier, that every challenge or every trial is an opportunity in work clothes, the opportunity is that the trial can produce this characteristic of perseverance in us, and perseverance will lead to us being complete or mature in Christ. So we're to receive trials with joy because it can develop perseverance. Now that word perseverance, some different translations will translate it differently. So perseverance, some have translated it as endurance. Another translation is steadfastness. So if you think of this idea of being steady or being able to endure, being able to persevere, that's what James is getting at. When you face trials, they test our faith, and the test is whether or not we'll persevere, whether or not we'll remain steady, whether or not we'll endure. And this endurance, this steadfastness, this perseverance will lead to being complete or mature. And I want to say that this isn't about a self-help kind of thing. This isn't about just, gritting your teeth and bearing it, persevering so that you'll become a better person. But the opportunity really is to invite God into the circumstances. So James goes on. He says, if any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. So again, the opportunity in the trial is to invite God in, and he will give wisdom to all of us without finding fault. And he says, but when you ask, you must believe and not doubt, because the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea, blown and tossed by the wind. That person should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. Such a person is double-minded and unstable in all they do. So there's kind of this contrast here. The beginning of the passage talks about persevering, enduring, remaining steadfast. The end of the passage talks about the person who's double-minded and unsteady, not believing when they go to the Lord and ask for wisdom, not believing that he will provide what they need. And so really the test here is when we're facing trials, the test is, will we remain steadfast in our faith? Will we persevere in our faith? Will we endure with God in the midst of the circumstances that we're in? Because if we endure with him, if we persevere with him, if we're steadfast with Jesus in the midst of whatever circumstances we're facing, it's his work in us that will develop us to maturity and to completion. I don't know about you, but I want to be the kind of person who is complete. Sorry, just dropped my notes there. I want to be the kind of person who is complete and mature, not sort of half finished. And so as I sort of process this past year, the challenges, all the challenges that have come our way because of this pandemic that we find ourselves in, the invitation for me in this, the encouragement for me is to embrace it, to persevere, to invite God into however I'm processing these events, to let him do the work that he wants to do in us. Kind of an example of this is if you work out. I don't really work out a lot with weights and stuff, but I do work out a little bit. But the idea of working out is that you put some tension on the muscles, right? If you're lifting a dumbbell, you're putting tension on your biceps, you're stretching it, you're putting it to the test. And as you sort of put your muscle to the test, it will develop and it will sort of endure and it will become stronger. Right? It's this idea of working out is testing our muscles, is stretching them and putting them through trials, so to speak. And it's the same idea here in James, that as we go through trials, it's putting us to the test, it's putting our faith to the test, and the test is whether or not we will persevere, whether or not we will remain steadfast, whether or not we will endure. And the promise is that if we endure and if we invite Jesus into the circumstances that we're going through, he will develop us to maturity and completion. So I want to just ask, what sort of challenges, what trials are you facing? What have you faced over the past year? Maybe there's been financial challenge, maybe there's been employment challenge, maybe there's been family challenges, maybe there's been different kinds of challenges that you've faced. And again, to quote the pastor I worked with years ago, every challenge is an opportunity in work clothes. And in the context here of James chapter 1, every challenge is an opportunity for us to grow stronger in our faith in Jesus, stronger in our walk with him, stronger in our steadfastness with him. And as we persevere, as we bring Jesus into the circumstances of our lives, he will develop us. He will do the work that he wants to accomplish in us and bring us to maturity and completion. So I want to encourage you, whatever it is you're going through, however you're processing the events of our day, that you would persevere, that you would hang in there, that you would invite Jesus in and let him do the work he wants to do. thanks for joining me today on another Tuesday Talk. We'll see you next week.